Welcome. We have a really special guest with us today. I am super excited to introduce you to Jimmy Wong. Jimmy is a wonderful YouTuber, musician, and actor recently in Mulan, which I thought you were wonderful in Mulan. My
Thank you.
students were really sad about No Mushu. That was like, they were
I
like,
mean, me
where was,
too. I'm not gonna lie. So,
right? And they were like, where was the singing? I'm like, well, Jimmy's a really good singer. So there should have been singing, but I thought that was just a terrific, you did a terrific job in that.
Thank you.
And my favorite, though, I have to say, we have a history with VGHS, which is
hmm
just such
hmm
an awesome web series. And my freshmen, they are very unfamiliar with it. So I am really encouraging them to,
Oh,
they're just below the threshold. And I told
right,
them the
right.
story about how we got first connected.
Yeah.
When my daughter was in fifth grade and she had diabetes, she has diabetes, but we don't have the pump. We have a lot more advancements now, but a lot of would have been sad times spent waiting for blood sugar to rise. We watched VGHS together, and always Ted Wong put a smile on her face.
Oh
And
man.
especially the law just always got her
Yes,
giggling.
I love the law. And your daughter also had an amazing Halloween costume that one year
Yeah,
too.
that's right.
So
She dressed up as Key. That was just
yeah,
amazing. But you did something so kind in inviting her to come to the premiere, and
yeah.
I'm so thankful that you are here.
Thank you. I mean, to be honest, like I do a lot of interviews. I talk to a lot of outlets, and a lot of people think like, "Oh, you're an actor, you're a celebrity. That means you just want to talk to the big people or whatever." But that's actually not my general interest. I think looking back at my own high school experience and the how sad I was, how hard it was, having people be able to talk to me then, I think would have had a huge difference. So this to me is like the most impactful and real thing we can do, I think, is talking to people that are, that might be actually going through something, not looking for, a reason to cancel someone or whatever it is happening on the internet these days.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us. I noticed over the weekend, and this is not something new,
hmm
but over the weekend, you shared a lot about just a rise in violence against our Asian brothers and sisters.
hmm
And if you could just kind of tell us, kind of the big picture, what's happening right now?
Yeah, so right now, as you all know, because you're probably at home watching this video, and you're sick and tired of being at home, you're not the only ones. The entire country and a lot of the world is still in a global pandemic. It's generally just not safe for us to congregate in the ways we normally would. We can't go to parties, we can't do festivals, we can't see our friends, because what we risk is an invisible enemy. We risk getting ourselves sick, but not just that, we risk passing it to the people that we care about and to the people who may not be as strong as we are to deal with it. At the same time, we might not even be strong enough to deal with it as well. And as a result, we've been asked to stay at home, to wear masks, to stay far apart from other people so that we don't risk giving each other a disease. And as a result, we've seen, and I've really seen this personally. I have a lot of friends that run restaurants. I have friends that are in different industries that require tourism, friends that work as tour guides in Disneyland. And I've seen all of their lives, and mine as well, but to a lesser degree, get upturned, upset, and changed by the fact that we have to implement all of these procedures and things. And there's been a lot of anger, obviously, and there's been a lot of frustration. There's been a lot of boredom. There's been a lot of every single emotion you can imagine. And as a result, I think it's kind of like when you shake up a soda bottle, and at first you shake it a couple of times. If you leave it there, it's going to simmer down over time. The pressure is going to release, and then you can open it safely. But the pandemic, to one big broad paintbrush in one color, the country has been, your state, your school, your family, everything's been inside a bottle and being shaken up constantly. And it never has gotten a chance to stop being shaken because we're still in the pandemic and these circumstances are still happening. I know a lot of us watched in shock as people, still have huge gatherings and no one's wearing a mask, and it's just making things worse for everyone else, but we have nothing to do with it.
Mm.
That bottle is being shaken up, and that pressure is building to the point where people are now lashing out and acting out in different ways in all across the country, right? And no one is at blame for acting out, but there are a lot of people that are acting out, and the ways that they're acting out, that is being now a threat to people.
Mm.
Specifically, ever since the beginning of the pandemic is something that I noticed, there has been a spike in rise in crime and hate crime, specifically against Asians, people that even look remotely Asian. There have been people that, not to get too graphic, but have been stabbed, have been slashed across the face, have been beaten, had their hair pulled, and most recently in San Francisco, I believe, 2 weeks ago, in 81-year-old man was shoved to the ground by an unknown assailant and died. And there was another video that just came out this last weekend in somewhere in New York, where an innocent mom, an Asian mom, just walking home, just a guy comes out of nowhere with sunglasses on and shoves her violently, and she hits a pole, passes out, has to get 10 stitches on her head. And normally, we see these kinds of crimes and we go, hey, it's a violent world out there. People are angry. But when it starts to happen very specifically to just one race and people that might not even be the same, all right, I'm Chinese, someone is Korean, they're Japanese or Filipino, doesn't matter. People are targeting people based on a look, something that they assign to that. And where that anger comes from is 1,000 different places. But one thing that we know for sure is that the pandemic and the circumstances around the pandemic has made those circumstances more severe than they would otherwise. I don't think we would be seeing this level of attacks happen if we were able to go back out and interact in normal, and that we had people walking around the streets so that someone with this cowardly behavior would not think to do something like this. They're doing this because there are less people out there. And for me personally, discrimination against Asians is nothing new in America. Right. It's nothing new across the world. And it's been something that's been going on for a long, long time. History students out there will know during the Second World War, we decided to put Japanese people and people that we didn't even know if they were Japanese or not into literal jail cells, internment camps. And that was just a widely accepted thing that happened in America to an entire group of people that may have had absolutely nothing to do with the war that was going on at the time, but purely because of their skin, they were targeted and put into jails. Asians were actually excluded in an act by Congress from even immigrating into the country for a while. And this is supposed to be the country where our Statue of Liberty represents a place for anyone of any race or color can come in here. And of course, oh yeah, please.
Well, it's not that long ago, which we don't really put it in the broad scope of time. My husband teaches history. Mm-hmm. He had a project where students had to kind of find a piece of their own American story. And it was about 3 years ago, a student interviewed her grandpa and she didn't realize he was in those internment camps. This is recent history.
Yeah, it's very recent. And, there are still people alive today that fought in those world wars. There are still mindsets from those world wars that may think it was okay to put those people in camps. In the same way that we do a lot of things in this country that oftentimes is not okay, but because we're afraid, because we don't know what's going to happen, because we think that maybe those people can cause us harm, we get to the point where we make really awful, irrational decisions. And I'm sure every single person in this room listening right now at home, you can put your hand up and say, well, I have a Black friend, I have an Asian friend, I have a Mexican friend, I have an ex-friend. That's wonderful and that's great. And I encourage everyone to explore all the friends you can, because friends are great and you can learn so much from someone else's history and culture and add it onto your own. That's a beautiful thing. But when it comes to sort of what happens, it's not necessarily it's not like, well, I'm not at fault, so it's okay. It's more looking at the country as a whole and saying, why are so many other people being like this? What has driven them to be like this? Why are they afraid, or why are they confused? Why are they angry? Why are they choosing Asians to be the people that they exert this anger against? And I think, Asians aren't alone in this struggle either. Black Lives Matter is obviously a very real thing that's happened. And I can't say that I've ever seen an Asian pinned down and killed by a cop in broad daylight, but I have seen Asians now being shoved to the ground and dying as well. And it may not be done by a cop, but that doesn't make it any different of an injustice. It's an injustice all the same. And I think for the Asian communities and the Asians out there that have historically in the past seen this stuff happen, and I was kind of taught growing up, don't make a fuss, don't get yourself in the principal's office, don't get in trouble. And when you see things happening, that also contributes to going, well, if I speak out, if I say something, if I do something, then what's going to happen? And that fear is actually in response to someone else's fear. And that's why they're getting, and so you just have this whole fear-based thing. There's not a single ounce of love anymore because everyone's looking out for themselves, and they can't blame anyone from doing that, especially if your parents are the ones that sort of got that idea in your head. And, our parents are here to protect us, obviously, and give us the guide to living life correctly. But that doesn't mean your parents are always right. Sometimes your gut is going to tell you something. If your best friend, you're walking home and someone shoves your best friend over and screams something at them, are you going to just stand by and watch it happen? Probably not, right? And did your parents teach you to do that? Or did something in your body make you do that you couldn't stop, that you just stood up and you went right to that bully or whoever it was and said, hey, that's not okay. You picked your friend up and you made sure that you made things right, or at least that you didn't stand idly by. And that's not something that your parents teach you, because it's hard for your parents to teach you something like that. That's just something that you instinctively do. And I think all of us have that in us. So when it comes to the question of like, well, it's not happening to me, so it doesn't matter, is a very dangerous thing to say, because one, we're all going to live very long lives. There's no guarantee that you're going to be free of any kind of this abuse, torment, bullying, anger, vitriol, violence, whatever it is. And there's no guarantee that the people that you love and are closest to you, maybe it's your future wife or husband, maybe it's your future partner, your child, isn't going to be subject to the same thing. So in a lot of ways, when you don't stand up for one thing, you're actually not standing up for a lot of things. And, you know, I think it's really important to always ask yourself, what is right? What does my body and my heart and my gut tell me is right? Does that conflict with maybe what I've learned growing up or even in class? How does it challenge my beliefs? How does it challenge the way I see the world? And most importantly, to have an open mind. One of the hardest parts about all of this is that I need to look at the people that are the criminals that are shoving these people over, punching them, stabbing them. And I have to find love in my heart for those people as well.
Wow.
Because
That's important.
none of us here could ever imagine ourselves probably doing that to someone. But that doesn't mean that the reason that that person got there wasn't for the right reasons, or wasn't for the reasons that they felt in their gut, in their heart, that they had to do something, or they were so fed up and angry that this is what they resorted to. And I think it's really important, because I mean, for me, I've had uncles that have died from alcoholism or lost their lives to gambling. I'm sure everyone out here, if not in your own family, knows someone that has lost their way and hasn't been able to find it again. And so I'm always trying to make sure that I'm not just demonizing the attackers and the people that are angry, because at the end of the day, we have to live with them and they have to live with us. And if we're just using each other as a scapegoat, you know, something from the Bible, by the way, historically, scapegoats.
Yes. Yes.
If we're using other people and other things as scapegoats and not looking at what's actually happening and how we're being driven to this point, we're going to find ourselves stuck in this hell. And it really is hell, because no one can trust each other. No one can be each other's friends. And I love my friends. I love having friends of every color and every race, because when I go to their house, when it's not the pandemic, and I get to eat what their mom cooks, are you kidding me? Why wouldn't you have a friend that's a different race? Holy moly, I've never tasted food like that in my life. I couldn't Uber Eats a better meal if I wanted to. So there's so many benefits to opening up your experience and your understanding of the world, because as humans, you know, you're in 9th grade now, so that makes you 15?
14.
None of you have even driven a freaking car before, okay?
And we can't get in the DMV. The DMV's closed. So they're like trying to wait for their permits. It's a nightmare.
Think about how much life that you have left to live. Like, how old are your parents or your grandparents still alive, right? If you're 15 now, are you going to get to 80? In that case, congratulations, 15, 30, 45. You're barely like a fifth of the way through your life. So, you know, you got a lot of life to live. Like, make sure that you're giving yourself, I always say your life is like a garden, right? Like, you have your own plants around, it's your colors, it's whatever you want. And if you don't want someone to step into your garden, they're not allowed. They're outside the fence. But you got to make sure you water that garden and take care of it as well, right? It's your crop, it's your own herd, and your life and your beliefs and everything, and your anger as well, right? Maybe in your garden, you shouldn't be tearing up plants if you're angry. Maybe you should just plant something harder in the distance so that you can look at it and learn from it, right? So there's always ways, I think, that we can, as humans, make our lives as awesome as possible. One of the ways for me is having a big group of friends and hearing other people and understanding their perspectives and trying not to have too much anger, especially when the easiest response for me to have against all of these people attacking my elders and the people in my community that we revere, our elders and our parents and grandparents, the easiest response for me is just to scream and be angry and to go out there and find someone and try and punch them back.
Right.
That doesn't fix bad word, right? That doesn't do anything. Right. It just makes you fester some more hate in your heart, and it makes that person not like Asians just that much more. So it's hard to sort of swallow the tough pill, but as long as I think you frame it around how do I make my life as awesome as possible, and you learn that enriching your life with other experiences and viewpoints, then I think that is a great place for us to position ourselves when it's about looking at the world and understanding why people are frustrated and finding it in our hearts to try and work with the situation and to heal it rather than to just beat it back.
Yeah, that's really good. And you mentioned some stuff there, so much wisdom there to unpack. And I love your calling back to love and to love even those who are our enemies. I mean, that's you talk about biblical stuff. That is straight
I
out
can't
of
do
it.
that. I'm just
It's
gonna let everyone know too, I cannot do that fully,
oh
right? And I'm
no,
33 years old. I'm
no,
twice your age. I'm sure you can't either, Sarah. I'm sure your
no,
husband can't either yet
no.
fully, but we try.
Well, and the thing is, we we are in this world of sin. We're in this world where we're not going to have that, but we have such examples of that in Scripture. And the scapegoat thing, that was just brilliant. We're going to be talking about that in our next unit in the Day of
Oh, nice.
Atonement. So that's perfect lead into that. I'm thinking about my high school students, and you mentioned something that they also mentioned when I was asking them about this situation, and that
Hmm.
is being with a friend and somebody like saying something or doing something either to them or to their friends.
Hmm.
What was your, and if you don't mind sharing, what was
Hmm.
your high school experience? Did you ever face stuff like that? Like, did you have any good examples or bad examples of how people handled that?
Sure, for sure. So in high school, I look young now, right? I tell you I'm 33, you're like, oh my gosh, you could be in college, whatever. In high school, I didn't even look high school age. I looked like I was 10 when I was 14.
Mm,
My high school was also pretty small. I only had like 200 kids in my class. I had known them for the past 4 years going into high school. And as a young, lonely 10-year-old looking boy in a 15-year-old world, I 100% had crushes on girls. I 100% had people that I looked at and was like, oh, if only they noticed me, if only they liked me. But I always felt that my appearance, and I was a tiny, skinny kid compared to the cool, buff athletes. I'm sure these
mm.
days it's who has the most Instagram followers. But I compared myself to them and I felt really low about myself.
Mm,
And no amount of encouragement could change that. My parents couldn't even come in and tell me, Jimmy, you're great, you're fantastic, love yourself, yada, yada. And that's one of those things that, I think it's an easy place to misplace your anger and all that. And I ended up getting bullied a lot by people who sensed that I felt low of myself and there was an easier target. No one needs to say it, right? If you're a bully, if you have some anger that you need to get out because you're hurting on the inside, you're not going to find the strongest kid at the school and yell at them. You're going to automatically, energetically know that one I can do it to. Test the waters. Oh, they didn't do anything? I can do it to them again. And I found that after I got bullied, one of my most, I have a lot of guilt and anger about how I did this when I was younger, is we would carpool to school because we live far away and there were a couple of kids that lived in our neighborhood that were younger than me. So by the time I was like a junior, senior, we'd be carpooling with eighth grader, ninth graders to school, and I'd be able to drive the car or my brother would drive the car. And automatically you can understand there's a power dynamic there, right? I'm in
mhm,
the front seat, I'm changing the music, my brother is driving and the young kids are in the back. I found that I started to make fun of them and
mm,
mock them and push them, shove them, small, I would call them microaggressions. And I couldn't control myself. That was the part that I just didn't understand at all in the moment because I just had anger. I was just pissed. I was just so upset and frustrated. I felt disrespected. I felt like people didn't like me. I felt like I wasn't attractive enough, strong enough. I cursed my parents for giving me this body. I cursed
mm,
them for giving me this face because I wanted to look as hot as that white dude on the team. And I'm not kidding when I say that, right?
mhm,
Like I had a lot of that self anger and I took it out on other people
mm,
after it was taken out on me. And it's one of those things where it just feels like a waterfall cascading, where you get whomped by a big, crushing bucket of ice cold water. And you're like, the only way I'm going to get warm again is if I dump this water on someone else.
mm,
But you do that and everyone's freaking wet. No one's actually
mhm,
changed anything.
mhm,
So it took me a long time. And even today at 33, I find myself still drying off from the water that
mm,
got dumped on me in high school.
mm,
And I think that's something that I would love every single person here to think about. Who's dumping water on you? Who's doing this to you? What is doing it to you? Are you doing it to yourself as a result of you're not loving yourself? And just focus on drying off. Focus on loving yourself a little bit more because you can carry the effects of high school through the rest of your life. And trust you me, you do not want to be like some of the people I've met my age group that still bicker and gossip and backstab and bully the same way that they did when they were 15.
mm,
It's not a pretty sight to see, and you want them to be better because they're that old. They're going to have a kid, they're going to do whatever it is in their current life, right? Like
mhm.
every single one of you in your position right now has the ability to not have that happen to you, and it's just a matter of having a low perspective and being smart about it and just being a little more patient with yourself and forgiving, because you're going to have to be that to a lot of other people in your life. Start giving a little bit to you.
Forgiveness is an important theme I'm hearing here. Forgiving
Yeah, it's tough.
ourselves, forgiving our enemies. Yeah, there's a lot there. One last question I have is, we're thinking about these high school kids. We're hearing this news. We're talking about that forgiveness and trying to understand others, but what can we do? Like, I think there's a little bit of a, and I heard from my students, treat everyone like the way you want to be treated, and
Right.
this kind of a thing. But beyond that, what can we do to grow from this experience and not just let it happen and not change us? What are some things that you would suggest, maybe for teachers or for students, things that we could do to make this a better place, make this a growing situation?
Well, one thing that I'm going to because again, one of the big things I've learned is that I can really only speak from personal experience. So this one goes out to all the smarmy smartasses in the class. You think you're smarter than everyone else. You know you're smarter than everyone else. You prove it with your words, your test results, whatever it is. I don't care. You're not smart. In fact, you are on the journey to maybe being the smartest person on earth. But you're not smart now. I'm not smart at 33. I don't think I'm going to be that level of smart that I cockily thought I was, maybe even for the rest of my life, right? And so what that attitude can sometimes bring is, one, people don't like you, okay? I'm just going to put that out there. You think you're cool and smart. It turns out a lot of people really get annoyed by it, and they think less of you, and they think you're actually dumber for being that way. So, and I don't know what percentage of people I'm talking to right now. So if it's just one person in the corner crying, I apologize. A really easy thing to do when you're smart is think that you're right about an issue, because it's the first thing that you thought about when someone asked you about it, or you thought about it for a whole 2 minutes and you're like, bam, got it, figured it out. This is not a problem. I don't need to deal with it, whatever it is. And I advise everyone to just stray far, far away from that kind of mentality as much as possible, because when I was high school, college and stuff, and something difficult would come up, I would hear about something, I would go, well, whatever, it's because of X, Y, and Z, duh. Well, like, have you seen Reddit? Have you read the news? Have you heard what I heard last night on my parents, whatever they're playing on their news station? It's really easy to come to a conclusion. It's really hard to find out what the actual answer is, I think. And human beings, we're inherently lazy. No one here wants to, very few of us actually want to go home and do homework and whatever. We'd rather just find a way to be lazy and not have to work that hard. And I think we should never apply that to the way that we think about issues as complex and diverse and deep as this. Yeah. I hope just in this conversation alone, maybe you've been given insight to a few more perspectives that you didn't realize existed, but that doesn't mean that they're any less significant or any less relevant. And I think if you're going to be a true student of this and a true, someone that grows from it, remove that ego of I'm right or I know what's right. And understand that there's always two sides to every coin. There's two sides to every argument. There's, sure, one might be more valid and legit than the other, but that doesn't mean that we should just completely not consider what the other viewpoint is. That to me is asking not why is this happening, but why are the people that are attacking Asians doing this? Why are the cops that swear an oath doing this to Black people? Why is this happening? Is it one thing or is it 1,000 things? Which things are more important than others? But you can't get to that solution unless you first tell yourself, I don't have all the answers, and I'm going to be on a quest to search for them. And then maybe after you've thought about it for a couple of days, a week or so, then you could be a little smarmier about it. But
you don't want to lose all the smarminess.
Yeah, smarminess is funny sometimes. It can be useful, but at the get-go, don't rush to a conclusion. Don't just think you know it because you're in 9th grade and you are no longer a middle schooler. I was pretty dumb compared to how I am now in 9th grade, at least in terms of emotional intelligence and experience. You cannot beat experience. Yeah. Experience is the #1 teacher of you in life. As great of a teacher as Sarah and Miss Crowder is, there's nothing that will teach you more in this life than actually going through it.
Well, and I think this is just golden. I would just really appreciate your time, because this advice to just, we have such fast access to information that we think we know what's right and wrong. But to take what you're saying is, let's take a moment to be humble. Let's take a moment to not assume we know all the answers, but in humility, seek truth.
Mm,
That's very wise. And that is something I think that will really help, because I'm concerned about our information age kids that are growing up, and they don't have to really search to find the answer. The answer is coming to them, but then to get that
mhm.
information with humility and say, I might not understand this as much as I should, and understand that experience will help that. I think that's really good advice. And I love what you said about
Yeah, for sure.
forgiveness. And I thank you for sharing your story with us, and bringing this awareness. This is something that's a problem at our school as well. We have
Mhm.
international students who are at our school. We have Asian Americans at our school. We have a diverse community that we want to care for. And so
Right,
I
right.
appreciate you sharing this with us. We look forward to seeing what other projects you're working on. What are some things that you're working on now? I know you've got your
Yeah,
YouTube
so
channel. I
much.
just
My
got your
gosh.
cookbook, which I
Oh,
love.
congrats. Yay. Thank you so much. Yeah, I have a
So
cookbook.
good. Yeah,
To
your
anyone out there.
cookbook is so fun. That actually, I had one student, Clayton, who was really excited. He's like, he did the water noodles. That's so good. I was like,
Thanks,
yes.
Clayton. You're a real one. Actually, one last thing on what you just said there about your international students and all that stuff. Okay, so let's take a little road trip back. All right, let's go back to the Second World War again.
Okay.
And the war, as many of you might know, Japan was allied with the Nazis and the rest of the world, and the Italians, and the rest of the world was basically against them. So in America, we had the internment camps, but we also just had this rhetoric of Japan bad.
Mm.
And remember what I just said about smarminess and getting to the answer too quickly? Do you realize just how incorrect of an idea the words Japan bad is, or Japanese bad, right? Every single one of you might have something that's made in Japan in your portfolio right now, or in your house, or in front of you, or your computer parts, whatever it is. But people said that because it was an easy conclusion to get to. It was one that a lot of people shared, in fact, because they saw the war happening and it was easy to get there.
Hmm.
These days, we're seeing China bad. Do you
Mm.
know how many people are in China? It's multitudes more than the people in America. So do you understand why it's bad, and not just, it's just straight up not right to say like, well, China's evil. It's like, hold up. Are you going to say that to the international student who worked their butts off to get here? Are you going to say that to his cousin that has no idea what's happening geopolitically around the world? So I think it's really easy for us to group things into boxes, because in our brains, it makes it easier to understand. And when
Hmm.
it's easier to understand, it also makes it easier to hate. It makes it easier to love. It makes it easier to do all sorts of things to it, but it also simplifies the way that we see the world. So,
Hmm.
my parting message is, anytime you hear someone just say, this is bad, this is good, don't just accept things on blind faith. We've seen misinformation do a huge toll on so many people. And the
Hmm.
fact that we're so lazy at this point that we'll take a Wikipedia article that someone could have changed minutes before we read it and just
Hmm.
assume that's the truth. It doesn't take more than a minute to relook up that same fact, look up something else to see a different viewpoint, and you're gonna thank yourself, because it's almost like you're building an origami something, and you fold the paper once in half and go, "What a masterpiece I've just made." How about you unfold it, fold it 20 more times, and make a crane, and then say, "I've made something with this thought or the thing that I've thought about."
Mm. Awesome. Oh, thank you so much. This has been really, really fun, really interesting. And I'm walking away feeling like, okay, I know that we are in a world of sin. We are seeing the results of this sinful world and how we're treating each other, but we're called to, like the scapegoat Jesus, forgive our enemies, even though we can't, and
Yeah, and if
I
you can't
teach
forgive
that
them fully,
we
get on the
can't.
path to forgiving
We
them, because
can't.
you're going to
Yeah.
learn more from that than anything else.
Yeah.
You're going to
Yeah.
learn a lot more from trying to forgive someone than just to keep hating them. Because, hey,
Yeah.
look, so sorry, students. If it seems like it's easy and it feels easy, it's because it's probably too easy, and you're
That's
not
true.
actually learning
That's
as much
really
as you
true.
could from it. So you're
That's
doing
true.
yourself a disservice when you take the easy road out.
Yeah. Very good. Well, tell us, how can we stay connected with you? You're on Instagram. What are some ways
Mhm.
the students can
Any
see
of
what you're
you,
working
if you
on?
want to message me on Twitter or Instagram, I'm at JF Wong, and I'll post all of my announcements there. I have a movie coming out later this year, actually, on Netflix. It's called Wish Dragon. It's got John Cho as
Oh,
the voice in it, Constance Wu, Jimmy O Yang, a bunch of really funny people, and I play the voice of the main kid in it.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
some good binge-worthy material when you all get bored on one of these nights.
Oh,
But when
that
that's
sounds
out,
great.
you'll hear me post about it. I'm sure your teacher will tell you too.
Awesome. Yes, I will be all over that. Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone, and be safe.
All right. Awesome. That was perfect. That was better than I could have hoped for. That was really, really good. I tried not to make it too Jesus-y, but you just set me up with the scapegoat because literally that's just Jesus on the cross. So
yeah, and we do it all the time. I think the one thing I would tell your students is it's one of those funny things where when you learn what it is, you start seeing it everywhere else, and that's a fun journey too. So.
My friend did a chapel message last year saying that Jesus is the goat. But then like talking about the Day of Atonement and how the sins on his goat, and then Jesus, it was just like, it's great imagery. It's great imagery.
Totally.
So, I'm just so proud of you. I think you're doing great. And I really appreciate your time. And if you're ever in Vegas or you ever need Vegas things, you got to hook up here.
Yes, absolutely. My wife's family actually spends a lot of time out there because they do a lot, they just love Vegas, and there's a lot of business out there too. So I'll find myself out there more often than not. So we'll definitely catch up when it's safe.
Maybe sometime we'll have to have you come to we have a whole big theater program. If you ever want to come hang out with high school kids, they would be really excited.
I'd love that. Even teaching a little acting, I'll do something. That'll be fun.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing.
Okay, cool.
All right. Thank you, Jimmy. Good to see you.
Anytime you need anything, just message me.
Okay.
All right.
It was, I guess, got to tell you a funny story because I was telling the students about this, and my third block class today, they were like, Mrs. Crowder, were you spamming his DMs? I'm like, what does that even mean? I'm like, I don't know. And so I put it up in the thing. They're like, no, you weren't spamming. I'm like, I don't think I was. I hope
also, we've talked so much in the past. It's not like it goes out of nowhere. So that's funny.
That's funny.
That's great.
Anyway, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Talk soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.